Mhm. Okay, so good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And this is at 6:05 p.m. Of the meeting of the Community Task Force. It is Thursday, December 16th, and we're going to do roll call. So with that being said, please, I'd prefer that you say here so I can hear you than me kind of watching you. Marcus Banner, which I know he's out. Marcus Bradley. Corey Battles.
Corey's here.
Thank you, Corey. Aubrey Flickema. Aubrey Flickema. Kevin Zaldivar.
Here.
Thank you, Kevin. Chime Blanchard.
Here.
Thank you. Carol Bailey.
Present.
Thank you. Penelope Williams.
Penelope's here.
Thank you. Charles Horton. Charles Horton. Walter Blaylark.
Here.
Sherman Blair. Tish Calamer.
Tish is trying to sign in. She needs the link sent to her.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Denise Haben.
It's Denise
Denise.
Haben, and I'm here.
Thank you. Joshua Brockaway.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. Ishmael Cordova.
I'm here, Chair Kriegler.
Thank you. Cynthia Rivera.
Here.
Thank you. And Karen Ariola.
Here, and Aubrey just joined.
Thank you.
And Tish Calamer just joined.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And I now motion, everyone should have received the minutes from our last meeting on December 2nd. And I would ask for a motion to approve those minutes.
I motion to approve the minutes of last meeting.
Thank you, Kevin. Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor of approving for the minutes?
Aye.
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 Okay, that motion passes. And I'll pass this on to then Sarah for public comments.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to open up the floor for any public comments.
Hi, this is Chief Lally. There is no one here at City Hall.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
We can then maybe share screen. We did have just a few slides that we wanted to present. Thank you everyone for providing your preference for subcommittees. We do have this results and we did send this in advance, but wanted to just show the results again for everyone's preference, like review one last time, and to share what are going to be the top subcommittee topics that we will address first. So Larry, if you can just share your screen.
My role has changed for tonight. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Sarah. I've got it as, let's see, I'm just gonna try to enlarge this so that it's more readable, legible. So it'll be a little tricky for it to be both legible and everyone able to see the entirety of it. So I'll do a little bit of scrolling. But what you see, I'm sorry, Sarah, did you want to?
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say that you will see that for each of the subcommittees that we agreed upon, the 7 of them, each have a column. And where you see an X, the person was either saying that I want this to be one of our 4 priority subcommittees, or an X under preference means I want to serve on that subcommittee. And we based the 4 highlighted priority subcommittees on the total number of people who listed it as a priority. And so I'm scrolling down to show you that, as you see, the second, let's see, subcommittees 2, 4, 5, and 7 were the ones who got the most number of folks expressing them as a priority. So 2 is here, 4 is 2 columns over from that, 5 is right next to it, and then 7 is on the end. So it just shows you that those are the numbers of folks who expressed that should be the priority. One thing to note is that the Civilian Review Board topic had the most votes, you might say, or the most number of people prioritizing it. I think that both the facilitation team and the leadership team and others believe that the Civilian Review Board subcommittee may only need just a couple of few meetings, given all the work that's been done to date on the Civilian Review Board. And so it may be that group is able to finish its work and give its recommendations back to the task force relatively quickly, in which case we could plug in another subcommittee once that subcommittee is finished. The other thing to be aware of is that there is no limit on the number of people who can serve on a subcommittee. It's essentially an opt-in kind of basis. So as long as you have an interest and can attend at the time that the subcommittee chooses, you can join that subcommittee.
Thank you, Larry. And then just to reiterate, the top 4 subcommittees are training, recruitment, hiring, retention, and promotion, racial and other profiling disparities, Civilian Review Board, and EPD allocations of resources. If you can maybe switch to the slide deck, there is a slide where it shows everyone's names under the different topics. You can just maybe show everyone.
I'll be happy to in about 25 seconds.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And then as Larry pulls that up, just wanted to see if does anyone have any questions so far? Member Flickama, if you like.
Yeah, just a quick question. So if I'm understanding it correctly, are people being assigned to committees, or it's just open to anybody who wants to? How is this working?
No, people have provided their preference, and so they have told us which subcommittee they would like to be serving.
Okay, so they will, at some point, there will be like assignments, or like there'd be an official, these are the people for the committees, right?
So
I'm sorry, Sarah. I was just going to say, Aubrey, that it is purely based on the desire of the member to join it. In other words, there's not going to be well, now we have a subcommittee, the door is closed. I mean, anybody can decide that they would like to join the subcommittee. We, as the facilitation team, are intending to initially send people who expressed interest kind of a scheduling preference note. So if you want to make sure you're on it, obviously make sure that the spreadsheet reflects that, so that our record keeping is accurate. But as far as we're concerned, if you want to come to the subcommittee meeting, come to the subcommittee meeting, then you can serve on more than one, that sort of thing.
So theoretically, it could be really a revolving door.
It could be. I mean, I think the hope is probably that there be a steady cadre of folks who, regularly attend that subcommittee and participate in it from start to finish.
Okay, can I suggest that we discuss having a more structured approach to it?
Yep,
sure. This is actually Sarah's portion of the agenda, so let me hand things back to Sarah while I look at it.
I think actually we do hope that it is a structured process where if you sign up for that subcommittee, there's some form of commitment to be part of that subcommittee until the recommendations have been identified and presented to not only the full task force and come to a consensus, but then the goal is to present them to the council afterwards.
Okay, thanks.
I can bring this up now. Which slide did you want me to bring up, Sarah? Sorry.
So let's actually stay on this slide here. We did want to just provide a few high-level guidelines about how this subcommittee will be, just some guidelines. One is that subcommittees will formulate recommendations via consensus, and that means you will come together as a group and then identify some recommendations and agree upon your group of subcommittees, and then come and present them to the full task force. Once the full task force provides their okay, then a volunteer from the subcommittee will present that to the council. Just noting that the EPD, the city manager, council members, Shaw and Powell are available to provide resources, answer questions as you're working together and would like a request for data or just want some questions or want to ask like the chief or others to come and present. That is given like a time that like appropriate time beforehand, that can happen. And then us as the facilitation team will be present and helping coordinate between like each subcommittee. So we'll ensure that once you're coming close to submitting some recommendations and presenting them to the council, we will work with the city to make sure that you have space in the agenda to give that presentation. So maybe stop share here and ask if there's any questions thus far. Denise?
Oh, okay, so I'm like real confused. And so pardon me, and of course my dog is barking right now. So you're saying then, I guess I'm trying to get clear on when the task force adopts like the work from the subcommittee, who is it that's going to be presenting the recommendations to city council? Would that be the chair or vice chair?
So we have provided some guidelines, and then you as a task force can take those guidelines or decide to go in another way. But we would say it's going to be a volunteer from that subcommittee, because not all, the chair and co-chair are not present in every subcommittee. So it would be a volunteer or a representative of that subcommittee will then present your recommendations first to the full task force. And then after that, they will also be then presenting it to the council.
Okay, and so that will, and again, you pardon because my dog started barking. So then the recommendations going forward, the task force, we will vote on them.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I could, Sarah, real briefly, Denise, I think the idea here is, if a subcommittee, comes to a recommendation, as soon as it's ready, as soon as the subcommittee has found consensus, let's get it to the task force. Let's see if we get their consensus. Let's get it onto council. So it's an iterative process in that respect.
Right.
Does others have questions about just those high-level guidelines that all subcommittees will follow?
Is the question really answered? I think they asked in the sense that we're talking about people getting on these subcommittees. I was under the impression like I wanted to be on police profiling, that would be the committee that I would work on. And if I have time to look in on those other committees that I could do so. However, I don't want, I think somebody said something about a revolving door. I think it is going to be very difficult for us to have a revolving door. Yeah, I'm glad you put that up there, because I think these are the people who should, those are the people volunteers to be on those particular subcommittees. And those are the people that should maintain some type of maintenance on those subcommittees. It should not be a revolving door. However, if any task force member want to come in and sit in or to give their opinion, surely they sure can. I think that's what you're saying.
Yes, that's correct. Completely agree with you. And all meetings, once they're finalized, so some logistical things will happen. The members who have signed up for that subcommittee will be, an email will be going out for just scheduling. And once that's scheduled and on the books, all other task force members will know about those meetings so they can join. But the hope is that these main people who signed up are the main members of the subcommittee and are committing to be present in each of the meetings until recommendations have been identified and presented to the task force.
Can I follow up? I see some hands up. Can I follow up? And I think also that those subcommittees should be to present, once they present it to the entire task force, then they should also present it to the council.
Yep.
It makes sense that somebody who's not on the subcommittee should not be able to, they should be able to articulate whatever they come up with, and also whatever the whole body come up with.
I completely agree with you. Thank you. And then just checking in, Ishmael, do you still have a question?
Yeah, I apologize for my voice. I actually have tonsillitis, so I'm sorry for that, guys. I just had a quick question. If we could specify instead of volunteer, I think that each subcommittee should have a chair to help organize it. And I think that if we specify that the chair will bring that update to the whole task force, I just feel like that's a little bit more specific. That would be more beneficial. I'm assuming that similar to the leadership that we have in the larger task force, anyone who wants to serve as a leader in the subcommittee will know the commitment needed. So I don't know if that's something that we wanted to implement into our subcommittees. A chair role, my bad.
One possibility there, Ishmael, is once the subcommittee convenes for its first meeting, it can make a determination and elect its own chairperson if that subcommittee feels that would be beneficial. It could be something we decide to standardize, but it also could be something that as I say, is just chosen on a subcommittee to subcommittee basis.
Great. So I just wanted to see, did anyone have any just seeing here their names, is this correct, or there is any final edits? Because our hope is that after this we will follow up with scheduling the subcommittees in the new year. Right, I don't see any hands up. Oh, Ishmael?
My name should be on the training and hiring and recruitment and retention one. I made that one of my preferences.
Cameron and Sheila will capture that and we'll correct it.
Great. So we did want to have a more of a goal setting conversation. So I am going to hand things over to Joe to kind of facilitate that conversation, where we focus a little bit more on what are our goals, what are our hopes for each of the subcommittees.
Thanks, Sarah. So I think once we're in our subcommittees, just thinking ahead, envisioning, imagine your first subcommittee meeting. At that point, all you'll have is the name, the topic of the subcommittee. But I think it would be good, and what we wanted to offer, suggest to you all, is to have a standard set of goals or outcomes that at a minimum each subcommittee takes on, so that you have some standardization, some kind of basics that in terms of tasks and products that each subcommittee takes on and reaches and achieves. And so what we wanted to do was to throw out, make suggestions of 3 of those goals that you all could start with. It doesn't presuppose that a subcommittee could say, well, with regard to this topic, our interest was such and such, and we want to make sure we do this. We want to make sure we add to it. Or this topic is distinct from the others, and so we want to take, in addition to these goals, we want to do something else. But we do think it's important to give a little bit of kind of structure to what you all are doing. So the first kind of suggestion around goals would be to allow space for, and these, we could call these goals or we could call these principles, whatever, to allow space for folks to be discussing and sharing their lived experience and their practice with the issue. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity. So for the more formal kind of thing where you're looking at a policy or something like that. But I think we want to make sure that each subcommittee allows for that space. Here's been my experience with this. The people I know, here's been their experience with this. That each subcommittee take that on as a principle to allow for space for that kind of discussion. Oh, Walter, I see your hand raised. Go ahead,
Yes,
Walter.
sir. Are we going to get that, who's going to be on the task force, that handout that was just shown, the slide that was just shown? Can we get a copy of that? We need to know. We all need a copy of that.
We can resend the Excel sheet and then also the slide deck that summarizes the top 4. But the Excel sheet shows all 7 subcommittees, so we can resend that.
Yeah.
And on Joe's topic, Joe, are we going to get some written guidelines so we can have some type of framework to work with? That's what you're saying?
Absolutely. I think that's what we're trying to work toward the consensus around right now as a whole group. Some basics, and then we can put that in writing after this discussion, however you all react to these that I'm suggesting, or if you have your other ideas to add to it, we can put that in writing and distribute that to the whole group as well. So you have it going into your first subcommittee meeting. That's a good question. And I think Sarah Walter's question was specific to the slide that had the names associated with the specific committee. So when you say slide deck, just want to confirm that's in that slide deck, right?
Correct. And we always upload the slide deck to the box, but we will also resend it. We would send out one specific slide after this meeting.
Perfect. That's what I was going to suggest, just to, for ease of finding it, that we extract that one sheet and send that separately so that folks have that easily on their fingertips. So creating the space for lived practice and experience in your subcommittee would be one goal that I would throw out there for suggestion. I see Norma, is a hand raised?
Yeah, Joe, I think there was another hand up. Denise, did you have something? You're on mute.
Mute me.
There you go.
I was just, supporting what Walter was saying, and actually I prefer having the slide rather than the Excel spreadsheet to be resent, because that was, the information was just too too drawn out. It's I like things to be really sort of concrete. So that was it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll send the slide and the other slide that also says subcommittee guidelines that has sort of a start of some guidelines to kind of add on to for the subcommittees.
Oops. Oh, wait. Oh.
Did you all show some guidelines already?
Yeah, it was very brief, but it was the general one where Sarah was talking about consensus and a facilitator will help you, and then how we.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, that was really not too.
Yeah, we'll
And I want stuff, I think we should, I'm sorry, Norma, I think we should create something generic, but not that generic. Something more, where we can really facilitate and get these subcommittees going and have the guidelines where we can create and work in that frame that we create ourselves and what we're looking for. I think we just need something generic from you all, some type of framework. And I think that's what you're asking for us to create that now.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll add that on to that as well.
That's what we are. Yeah, Walter, that's correct. We're throwing out 3 as suggestions. And then you all can build on that or whatever, edit, revise, whatever. So the first that I was going to suggest feels like a very important principle, guideline, I guess you could say, different word to use for a subcommittee, which is to ensure and create the space for lived experience. The reason why I elevate that to the top is it often gets devalued in a lot of discussions around policy and stuff. It's just, people want to say, well, this has been the practice and this has been the official word and this has been.
Say that again, Joe. What are you calling it? Lived experience?
Lived experience. Create the space for lived experience to be shared in your subcommittee discussion. That is part of what we're suggesting is a primary function of this committee is to facilitate that kind of experience getting into the discussion. And then review of police policy. And that's I think what we would all expect to do on a group like this, right? What is the current policy related to this issue or relevant to this issue? What does it say on paper that in terms of the practice, what officers and the department is supposed to be doing, and any other related document to that policy that provides some guidance officially to the police department. That is something that, again, each subcommittee probably should do is, take a look at those policies, review them, and then provide some comment or recommendations or infuse those in a deliberation in some way. Take a robust look at that policy, those set of policies. And then the third is related to how this task force relates to the community in general. You all were selected to be on the task force, but there was always envisioned an opportunity for you all to collect input from the community and feedback from the community on questions that you all frame to your friends and neighbors, your fellow community members on this issue. And so when we get around to having those meetings with the community or the input sessions from the community, whatever shape they actually end up taking, now is the time within these subcommittees for you all to think, what would I want to hear from others? What would I want to hear from the community related to this issue? And to maybe start to frame those questions. In our experience in doing those kinds of community dialogues, how you frame the question and what the questions are is crucial, is critical to how useful those conversations are. It's great to have a discussion, how do you feel about community policing in Elgin or something like that? But you also want to make sure you have very specific questions that you pose to folks to enhance and add to the discussions that you had in your subcommittees, and to add ultimately to the work of this body. So I would put those three out there. Creating space for lived experience, reviewing police policy, and framing questions for community input. And then I'll throw it out for discussion. How do people feel about those? Are those a good basis for a starting point for sets of goals for each of you all, for each of the subcommittees? Or did you have other suggestions or expectations?
First of all, let me say that those are excellent. I think, starting points. I appreciate that, and I hope we have others. But that was great. Thank you for that.
Mm. Chair, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I totally agree with Walter, that I think those are fantastic questions, the exact questions that we should be starting off with. So I definitely agree with that.
I think, we can start to construct a slide that will have these, plus the ideas that you all have on there. I don't know if that's something we can do on the fly.
I am creating a whiteboard right now,
Okay.
so that we'll share in the end.
Perfect.
So based on people's
Perfect.
edits.
Aubrey.
Yeah, I think those are great. And I apologize to go backwards. I'm just sitting here thinking, and I have some real concerns about the structure still of how we are doing the subcommittees, that they're really just open for anybody to go to. I would really love to hear some context for why that decision was made. And not that I want to close them off for people to listen. It just feels like if we want to get some things done, for somebody to, and hopefully no one would do this, but for somebody, let's say that I have been serving on one committee and I want to go to another committee the third, fourth week that they're in session, and then I'm going to bring all of my own, input after missing 3-4 weeks of context. It just feels like it's going to be messy and it's going to inhibit our progress. So I would really love to hear what the intention behind that was and why that decision was made.
That's a good question. I'm not sure I can speak to that. I think at least it was about trying to start with the process as loose and open as possible, and allow you all to, if there were going to be any limitations or constrictions, allow you all to define those. So I guess I would put that question out to the group to see how people feel about that.
I think we had so many topics and we tried to put them together, and we had so many people was so passionate about many of those topics, and it was difficult maybe even for me to look at one like the police civilian group. I really want to really talk about some things that need to be added on that. However, I went and said, no, I can't do that. Let somebody else do that. And maybe I can pass that on to the subcommittee, my thoughts on it. And I hope, Aubrey, that we would do that, is pass our thought on about what we think that maybe you should, whatever subcommittee should look at that. That was all of my thinking about that. I hope no one would come in and disrupt, or you got the framework, or you working and you got something going on in any of these subcommittees. I hope that would not happen. I think that we're going to be so busy with our own subcommittee that I'm not going to have time just dealing with racial profiling. But that was my thought. My thought was that, and as I thought about it, you're right. I wouldn't want to come in 3 weeks or 4 weeks missing a subcommittee and saying, hey, I think the civilian review board should, get a stipend. And that's my pet peeve.
I want to jump in, Walter, because I noticed that council member, task force member Calamer had her hand up. And was it did you want to comment in the flow of this discussion, or did you have a new question? Go ahead, Tish. You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate what Aubrey said, which is I do think we need some structure. And in order for us to move forward, we simply just need to make assignments or volunteer and commit to however many subcommittees we want to commit to. I think what's going to happen is in each subcommittee, the topics and the questions and concerns are going to overlap and are going to be touched upon. The group that looks at the allocation of the budget will certainly touch on the topic of racial profiling. The group that touches on racial profiling will no doubt also talk about training. Everything, I believe, is interwoven. So I think we just need to pick the topic that we're most passionate about. We're still going to meet as a committee on the whole and present our findings, and we can have a discussion then. We can still go to one another, people on other subcommittees, and say, hey, I have this question. Do you think you can bring it up at the next subcommittee that I'm not on? Whatever. Nobody has time to be on every single subcommittee, and the task force is not the subcommittee. So I would like to see us just iron these things out because we need to get started doing the work. So far, with all due respect, we've been discussing how we're going to discuss things. And I'm anxious to just get down to the work. Thank you.
Really quick too, I guess I would just be interested to hear, is there anybody in the task force now that would want the freedom to be able to pop into meetings whenever? And no judgment, if that's you, great.
Can I respond to that, Joe, real quickly? These meetings are subject to the Open Meeting Act, and so they are public meetings. Everybody can watch these meetings. And so attending them is not a question. I guess the question is, how would they have access? Would they be watching through the YouTube stream, or would they be accessing through Zoom, which means that they could speak during that time? But I also am under the impression that we have identified through our own checking off the list that we have the subcommittees tabulated and ready to go.
You're correct, Josh. We have identified the members of each of the first 4 subcommittees, and our next step is that we will reach out to start scheduling the meetings. And you're correct that these are going to be live streamed, so anyone can join and follow the live stream and come with questions during the full task force meeting if you have any questions for that specific subcommittee, or reach out to the facilitation team who will be on every subcommittee meeting if you have any questions that you would like to present or for the subcommittee.
And just to clarify also, in the event that multiple subcommittees meet at once, we'll still have separate live streams of each subcommittee so folks can track. And just for everybody's edification, I think all we're trying to do is accommodate the desires of the task force. And so whatever you all would like to see as a norm of practice as it relates to subcommittee membership, we will be happy to abide by that. Joe, back over to you.
Okay, just want to acknowledge Kevin, who's had his hand up for a while.
Yeah, so in regards to task force members coming in and out, I think it raises a real concern because you don't want to digress or regress to a conversation that was already passed. as a subcommittee. However, I feel that the way to address this issue is to look at scheduling. I'm one of those individuals where I believe that it is important for me to pop it into multiple conversations. Simply, an easy example is you can't discuss the funding of police resources without the hiring and firing of police officers. So I would need to be jumping into both of those conversations, one, to keep that subcommittee informed of our findings, and two, just to add what we're seeing through our end and our input. And so I think there's discussion about either using this time as subcommittee time. But I think that raises a real concern about how the public would be able to manage multiple simultaneous meetings and pay attention to those. So I think scheduling is going to play an important role in how often we should be able to, or we can participate in other meetings and other conversations of this topic. I think with that in mind, being able to be a part of more than just one subcommittee is possible.
Thank you for that, Kevin. Ishmael?
So when we started discussing the subcommittees, I was one of the people that were a bit adamant about limiting the amount of people that are in each subcommittee. When the leadership team met, I had originally recommended 3 subcommittees with about 6 members per subcommittee. And then we kind of talked about not limiting people, which I understand as well. But I'm pretty sure that, like I stated when we first started talking about subcommittees, everyone can't do everything. And that's the truth and the unfortunate portion of all of this. But all of us are still going to be incorporated in that conversation, because every recommendation that is made has to come before all 18 of us. And we still have to get the consensus of all 18 of us to move forward with the recommendation. And so when we talked about subcommittees and how we can arrange those, because not everyone has the free time during their week. We all have jobs, we all have families, we all have et cetera. I really want to utilize our task force meetings to possibly utilize that for subcommittees. And my recommendation was the first hour would be dedicated to 2 different subcommittees, so 2 different Zooms running at the same time, 2 different live streams, and then the second hour would be the other 2 running in the same format. And that kind of concept would be that we kind of just pick the top 2 that we want to participate in, and kind of do that. I do just want to reiterate that, like, all of us are going to be incorporated in that conversation. I'm assuming the facilitation group will be sending out minutes for each subcommittee as well, so we can read those and ask questions when they do updates and things like that. But I do believe that we need more of a structured setup. But because, for example, the Civilian Review Board, I believe that got like 12 or 14 priority and people wanted to serve on that. And that seems like an extremely large task, a subcommittee. Like, I'm like, if we're gonna have a subcommittee of 18 people, we could have just discussed that as a group, you know? So I don't know, that's just kind of my mindset. I think that there is a way possible, but I think we just have to reiterate that none of our voices are going to be overshadowed or not listened to, because ultimately we should share those feelings, whether that be we reach out to the subcommittee and we talk during their meeting about what we feel or our own personal life experiences, or we talk about it amongst the whole task force. So I would recommend we try to narrow that down with the structure. We can simply have 4 subcommittees with 9 people in each one. And, that could either fall on the whole task force or on the leadership to kind of arrange that. But I think that's a recommendation we can definitely go forward with.
Thanks, Ishmael. Just would like to remind folks, we are noting down your recommendations as the discussions is happening. So if I just move on to the next person, it doesn't mean I'm not acknowledging your comment. Go ahead, Aubrey.
No, thank you, Joe.
Okay.
My question is, and I agree with everybody here, and Kevin, I totally understand why there would be a need for you to speak into other subcommittees, and I think that's true of a lot of people here. I guess that's why I think it's important that we decide on a structure for not just how we're doing the subcommittees, but also how that information is brought back to not just when the recommendations are complete, but like how the work is going and updates on how the work is going in each subcommittee, bringing that back to the larger task force, because I think there will be a lot of intersection between these different topics. And I think it will be important for there to be somebody sharing in larger task force meetings. I'm not sure how frequent those will be once we get subcommittees going, so that there is opportunities for crossover, or for me to say, hey, next week, we're going to be talking about this topic. Kevin, would you mind coming in and sharing what you guys are talking about in your subcommittee, and vice versa. So I think that's why I'm asking for more of a structure here and more organization, because I don't think it's just going to happen organically necessarily.
Yeah, thank you, Aubrey. And I'll just throw something out there since you started this thread of the discussion. I wonder if there's a way to just acknowledge that there will be folks who are subcommittee members. Let's just say they're core members or something like that. And so while we have people possibly floating in or out, when we're talking about consensus, when, within the subcommittee, or the subcommittee is making starting to formulate a recommendation or something like that, that there's some way to acknowledge that those folks who are the core members collectively are the ones who are doing that work. They can still acknowledge and factor in the input from someone who is a member of another committee who is sitting in and throwing it out there. But as a way to kind of build in a structure that ensures that old business is not needing to be rehashed necessarily, right? Those members on the committee can mention back to that person, look, we did have a meeting where we discussed this, and here's why we chose to go in this direction or that direction. You can engage in a discussion with them about it. But ultimately, when it comes to the consensus, that the consensus is amongst the core members. So that could be a way to accommodate the input without it kind of disrupting a process that a group of people have worked on getting to, because somebody hadn't been a part of that conversation yet.
And Joe, jumping here, I know that we have some hands up, but also kind of want to get a clear idea to move forward, because we are going to start, like, our goal is the beginning of the new year, really just jump forward with these subcommittees. So just want to be clear. So the proposal that we're presenting is the slide that we shared those are going to be the core members of the subcommittee. And they're the ones who are going to be working on that topic. If another member of the task force would like to join, they would ask to be part of that, so that agenda, or that core task subcommittee can ask for another member to come to talk more about a certain issue. So that kind of just provides a clear structure there, that these things, Larry, these are the core subcommittee members, and they have committed to be in every subcommittee meeting. And then anyone else who would like to just know what's going on can follow the live stream and the minutes. But if they would like to present, that they will coordinate with the facilitator or the staff would like to be included in one of the meetings.
And then I'm going to turn it to Cynthia in just a moment. I think also what I see as part of our role as the facilitation team is to facilitate that cross communication across committees, especially where you see committees possibly discussing the same topics from the perspective of their committee topic, and to make sure that that information gets shared across. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, my comment was along the same lines about cross communication. I propose that we have something on the agenda that's and a spokesperson for each subcommittee, and just 3 minutes, a spokesperson just gives an update of what's going on in each of the subcommittees, if they're stuck on a certain subject or where they're progressing or what they've agreed to, and do that for each of our task force meetings that take place. Just a brief update. And also, I'm flexible with the subcommittees. If I need to be moved to another one or removed, I just want to indicate that I'm flexible. Like if there's heavy representation in one of the subcommittees, I'm flexible to step down and give someone else a chance, or I just don't want one subcommittee to have more people than needed. So I just want to indicate that.
So I'm just going to throw out there, Tish, is this along the same lines, or are you introducing a new thread?
I just wanted to know, has each task force member expressed a preference for a subcommittee? Are we all, have we all volunteered for one, or are there some people that have not?
So
there's one member who
Yeah.
we have tried to email and call but could not reach. But 17 of the 18 members have voted.
Okay, that's good to know. And going back to what Cynthia said, it's typical of any kind of board. A meeting always includes subcommittee reports. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. It's a structure as old as time. Robert's Rules of Order goes back to 1300 or so. So subcommittees and committees have been around, and everybody is allowed to report and update everybody else.
So we'll go to Denise, and then I'll try to summarize kind of the options that people have suggested and present those back for a, I don't know, discussion or vote in some way.
Okay, thanks. So could you put the slide back up there, please? Okay. So I'm real confused again, and I'm real sorry. So you're saying then the names for each of these subcommittees, those are the people that are the subcommittee. Because when I look at Subcommittee for Development of Civilian Review Board, you know, there's 5 of our names, but yet there were 12 or 14 people who signed up.
No, actually, Denise, to clarify that, there were 12 people who said that the Civilian Review Board should be a priority subcommittee. There weren't necessarily 12 people who said they wanted to serve on that subcommittee. Only those people who said they wanted to serve on it are listed there.
Got it. Thank you. So this is why we need this slide rather than the Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I get confused.
Yes, got it.
Yeah, because I process information in an odd way. So that was one thing. And the second thing is, I feel like a lot of us some of us are sort of dominating this discussion. And I'm real interested in hearing what my fellow and sister task force members think about this. That's it.
In that spirit, Denise, we'll turn it to Penelope.
Yes, I wanted to get some clarity, because at our last meeting, when we were forming these, the question was the one that we want and then our other preferences. So I see my name is on like a couple of these, but I wanted to kind of clarify that my main one is the training. So I don't need to be on the other ones. Just for time's sake and all that, it's just going to be too much.
Yeah, and we can certainly make those modifications either tonight or, you know, as we follow up with the folks that are signed up. So we'll make that modification, Penny, for yours, and can do so going forward.
Yep, I've noted it. Thanks, Penny.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks, Penelope. I'm just going to echo Denise's call out for anyone, maybe someone who hasn't spoken yet on this particular issue, to chime in.
I'm kind of, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Charles, is that you?
So I'm where Tish Coleman spoke earlier. I think we're wasting too much time talking about getting to it. I think we got to get to it. If we meet, we're going to meet some bumps in the road. No matter how much we try to iron it out on the front end, once we get into the meat of it, there's going to be some bumps in the road that we're going to have to iron out at that time. We're all respectful here. We all have the same goal in mind. So when we come to those things, we'll just work it out when we come to it. But the time we're spending on it, trying to get to it, that time can be used to work through it when we get to it. And that's pretty much where I stand on it.
Got it. Chair Kriegler, and then we'll move back to the original topic of this discussion about goals.
Okay, I guess because these are the most popular ones, I'm just wondering, because there are some ones that I'm seeing here that I definitely did want to be a part of, but if they're going to all be running at the same time, that is going to make it difficult. So I'm just wondering, because my idea or my thought was the ones that got the lower ones to have those running, 2 of the popular ones and then 2 of the least popular ones. It would give people, I think, a little bit more of an opportunity to participate. And maybe even, where people would maybe want to even think about serving on the other ones that were maybe a little bit more least popular. But that's just my thought. I did want to, like I said, serve on a couple of these.
Chair Kriegler, if I may, our hope is that we will follow up with the core subcommittee members with the polling, and we will identify time that works with their schedule. Okay. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they're all going to be running at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So I think we heard, and I apologize, does anyone else have their hands up? Sometimes I have trouble seeing the hands. No?
No,
Okay.
Joe.
I think we heard a clear strand around this idea of core members and within a particular subcommittee, and of course it being consistent with standard practice and Robert's rules. Is that something, Chair Kriegler, you think we should, could we put that part to a vote just to confirm that so that there isn't any confusion about that moving forward, and we can kind of agree that that's a foundational principle of practice for each of the subcommittees?
Okay, definitely. I guess we move then to for a motion in regarding to the Roberts rules being applied to the subcommittees. Looking for a motion.
So move.
Okay. Well,
do we want to have a vote too? Because that's where you put it.
And we need to state the motion?
Yeah, I think it's the motion. It's not just, I guess it is Robert's rules, but it's just stating that there are core members who will be forming the consensus of decisions, the consensus basis decision of the subcommittee's decisions, right? So if you're a core member and we're talking about consensus, you are the ones who we are talking about, right? Others can float, others can come in, can comment, right? But when we're talking about consensus, it's the core members. So that's, Chair Kriegler, that's what I was suggesting to vote, but is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Okay, just to be clear. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So then what we're looking for then is that the subcommittees, am I correct, Tish, in reference to making up their policies or their group? Tish, can you say that again, what it was? Because I think I'm a little bit confused here.
What I was saying was each subcommittee should follow the structure of Robert's Rules of Order, which is whatever happens in their meetings, in any of the subcommittee meetings, it's typical at any kind of board, council, task force meeting, those committees report. It's part of the meeting structure. So once our subcommittees get going, every meeting will feature a portion of time devoted to subcommittee reports.
Okay.
So I move that subcommittees follow the general structure of Robert's Rules of Order, whereupon they are required to report on their meetings at the meeting of the whole, the committee of the whole.
So then, as I had stated previously, that I'm moving for a vote in reference to the subcommittees following the laws of Robert's Rules. And that is that they would then report back their information at all of our meetings, the regular task force meetings, updating us, correct?
And you as chair would call upon the subcommittees
yes,
one by one to report.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And it becomes part of the agenda.
Okay. So yes, I move for that vote then.
I second.
I third.
Okay.
We
So
have
I
to
would
vote.
say that
Now we vote.
We have to
Yeah, and
vote.
so now there has to
Now-
be a vote, Chair.
Yeah, now we call for a
Yes.
vote.
So
Yeah,
now we
you
call for a vote, please. Okay, so I call for that vote. Thank you.
So
All
can
those in
You want to
favor,
do a roll call
all
on
those
that?
in favor say aye
Yeah,
or roll call.
yeah.
All of those in favor, say aye instead of doing the whole roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
All of those
Sounds like the ayes have
opposed,
it.
Yeah,
and then you
gotta
have
do
to
the
give the
nays.
nays.
Yeah,
All those
Chair
opposed say
Kriegler,
nay.
let's do it again, I think. And
Okay.
we indicate, because some people need to, it might be indicating with a thumbs up. So
They
it's
are.
a thumbs up or an eye. And so, we need to instruct them to do that as part of the vote. So it would be something to the effect of all those in favor, give a thumbs up or indicate aye. But with your-
Okay, let's
Yeah.
do the one with the thumbs up. So all of those in favor?
That's a violation of the Open Meetings Act. So I think you'll need a roll call vote. I'm sorry. I'm just like a stickler.
How is that a violation of the Open Meetings Act to do aye or that we need a roll call for precision? You're
Roll call
muted,
vote
Denise.
in Robert's Rules of Order, roll call vote oversees or has more value than a general
Right.
Okay.
nay or say. So if someone suggests
Right.
that and gets a second, then they're able to actually go through roll call.
Right.
Okay, so we'll go through roll call then. Corey Battles?
Not present? Oh, Corey Battles.
I don't hear him. He was present.
His square is there, but he's not audible.
Okay, Aubrey Flickema?
Aye.
Kevin Zaldivar?
That's okay. Yes.
Shyman Blanchard?
Aye.
Jewel Kriegler, aye. Carol Bailey?
Aye.
Penelope Williams?
Aye.
Charles Horton?
Aye.
Walter Blaylock?
Unreadiness with an aye, because I think I need to say this. I totally agree with Charles Horton. Looked like that we took a lot of time talking about this topic. It didn't make sense. Seemed like we need to know each other and deal with each other, because I think that some people are, think that, everybody's going to be running wild. So I go up with aye, but I think we need to move forward and let's go ahead and do this. Totally agree with Charles Horton. Aye.
Tish Calamer?
Aye.
Denise Haben?
Haben. and
Haben. Joshua Brockway?
No.
Ishmael Cordova?
I abstain.
Cynthia Rivera?
Aye.
Karen Ariola?
Aye.
And Chair, you
sounds like the nays
did
have
get
it.
Corey Battles back.
Corey Battles?
And I vote aye.
Sounds like the ayes have it, and the nays? We are pretty much done with that. So at this point, we're moving forward, and the consensus of the group is that there will be reporting along the lines of Robert's rules at all of our task meetings, that they will be bringing the information back to us and updating us on a weekly basis or at our meetings.
We have several hands raised. I think we've got questions, so.
Also just want to start jumping in here. We also want to confirm the structure, right? So it's going to be the core. I think that was how the conversation started about.
Yes.
So can we maybe get also get that
Let me, if I may, just really recommend in the strongest possible terms that you all not take another roll call vote on this matter. You all do not need to vote on everything that you choose to do. It's fine that we just took a roll call vote, but it's time consuming. As long as you all are comfortable with a particular direction, it's okay to agree to it by consensus and to move forward. So in reference to what Sarah was asking, I think that we're just wanting to make sure that the members that were identified as wanting to serve on each subcommittee will serve as the core members, and other members of the task force can view meetings via live stream or read minutes and offer their input at the full task force. Sarah, do I have that about right?
Yes, that is exactly what we're proposing.
And so I just need to see, I see hands up. I don't know if there are hands to comment on any of this or if they're supportive. I'm not sure. Joe, excuse me for getting in your way there. Go ahead.
It looks like I think folks had comments or questions. So we'll start with Denise.
Okay, I was ready to make a motion that we, so now I'm all mixed up again, that the people who've been identified as the core members for each subcommittee are the core members. That was my motion.
Got it.
Understood.
Okay. So, but we also have some questions. Do we want to pause? Can we pause on that just for a moment, or you want
Sure,
to? Chair Kriegler, do you want to?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to say this, that, we're all adults here. And I'm trying to understand, I'm thinking that once we get in these committees, that we should be able to handle ourselves the way we need to. And I'm just trying to understand of saying, people can't participate here, we can't participate there. I'm kind of not understanding that. I mean, in regards to having structure, there will be structure. I think we all know how to carry ourselves,
Right.
But the one thing after another, we keep coming with these policies. I think what's happening is we're going to pretty much start to, of what we really got on here to do, we're narrowing what we're wanting the outcomes to really be. Mm-hmm. And you're going to start making people really feel like they really don't want to participate, I think there's a lot we all bring to the table. And I think that, like I said, and just like Larry said, we're continuously trying to narrow everything and narrow everybody. Let's get into the meetings and then see how things go, and you'll find out as those, we start to move in that way of what really needs to be done. I don't think anybody necessarily jumping in and out of meetings. I just don't see that.
Who got the time?
But absolutely.
Man, these people don't trust each other.
Joe, if I could, excuse me, Pastor, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, you did.
I think, Pastor, I apologize. I just think, Joe, that, we understand that there's a desire on the part of this group to move forward with the subcommittees, with the folks who have expressed a preference to be on them, and that, folks want the subcommittees to make a lot of forward progress and, not be disrupted by folks who join in midstream and want to revisit what the subcommittee has already accomplished. So obviously the task force members can observe and, participate as they wish. I think that shouldn't be about is just let's have some continuity. Let's get the subcommittees to start meeting, and if folks want to chime in, they chime in. But let's try to focus on the folks who expressed an early interest in being part of the subcommittees.
I hear you, Larry. Chair Kriegler has, you got your hand up. Was that from before?
Yeah, it was before. It's
Okay.
I'm taking it off.
Okay. So on that, in response to both your comment and Larry's follow-up, I think just wanted to turn it back to the discussion about the goals for each subcommittee. And maybe, we did have a break. We kind of blew through the break as far as that was scheduled. But I think maybe the thinking was we didn't have much left on the agenda that we could kind of get quickly through this last part here and then wrap up. I just want to acknowledge that on the schedule and beg permission to continue unless folks are feeling like we need a break, because we're 15 minutes past the time we had a break scheduled. Ishmael.
In all honesty, I do think that we should probably just close this conversation. I think that all of us kind of know where we're going to be moving forward with the subcommittees. Okay. We're going to be starting in the new year. That gives us 2 weeks to really consider what we want to get out of this. So that I think that could be a task for the task members to think about until our next subcommittee meeting, and then we can take a break and move forward with our agenda if everyone is in agreement.
Okay. So you are suggesting to break?
Correct.
Okay. Anyone else object to a break now or want to second that? Okay.
I have a hungry cat, so.
Okay, we'll break for Larry. How long are our breaks typically? Sorry, I'm forgetting.
About five or so minutes. Yeah.
So we'll reconvene at, what is that, 7:22? Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you in 5 minutes.
Hey, Larry, we can see your web browser.
My apologies to folks who inadvertently I showed a tab on my screen that was irrelevant. Sorry about that.
All right, 7:22. I see some of us back with our screens on. And let's see, hopefully people's cats are not hungry anymore and are ready to finish, wrap up the discussion. So in the interest of just kind of, again, following the spirit of the last few comments about folks wanting to get into the substance of why they're here, the substance of the subcommittees. I threw out three suggestions of foundational, I don't know, I guess we could call them guidelines or goals for each of the subcommittees. And I think we heard, at least the folks who spoke sounded positive in their reactions to those. So I was actually going to suggest that we use some time now to actually go in and have, obviously in the context of a full meeting, but some conversations about goals specific to each of the subcommittees from the folks who are going to be the core members. As I suggested, the goal of creating space for lived experience, reviewing public policy, and identifying opportunities for community input, or what the specific questions are for community input, as foundational across the subcommittees. I was going to propose that we actually go committee by committee right now and have folks who are members of those committees just start to suggest very specific things that would be important outcomes if they have them. If you haven't had a thought about it yet, that's fine. But as a way to kind of jumpstart the subcommittee conversations. So I don't know how people feel about that, but I think that we have some time now. And so why not use it to really start, of course, at a very general level, but start a conversation about specifics in each subcommittee. Go ahead, Kevin.
Hi, Joe. I would just like to make a recommendation that this be held when we are broken into our subcommittees that could be further presented. I think it would be a good time to actually tally or poll available times to see when these subcommittees could be held. And that way, if we can initially see as a group together whose schedules conflict and whatnot. So maybe identifying the core members and discussing that and scheduling would be a great start. And then as we break, after we identify, we could break down into the subcommittees, then have those discussions and then report it back when needed.
Thanks, Kevin. Tish, you raised your hand at the same time too.
I think too, maybe if there's somebody that has the desire to either change their preference or who would like to join a group, maybe they could just do that now. Real quick.
Okay.
Is there anybody that would like to join a group that maybe didn't express a preference earlier? Maybe they missed the deadline. Maybe they didn't realize what the process was going to be like. Speak now or forever hold your peace, that kind of thing.
I think both of those are things we can tackle right now. I'll just want to get a nod from others in the facilitation team as well, that we can manage that.
Couple of other hands, Joe.
Okay.
Maybe before.
Who do we have? Aubrey, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry if this has already been asked. Have we made a decision on the frequency of when these will meet? Because I think that might help people make decisions on if they want to switch or reduce or whatever.
Larry,
Joe,
you're going to do that.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Joe, no, we've not. I think there may be some that think that a more frequent cadence would be helpful, and then others that would like to stick to an every other week. So we just didn't make a prejudgment.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Chair Kriegler.
Yeah, I'm looking at that, and I guess looking over it, that I think I do want to be added to the subcommittee on the development of the Civilian Review Board.
Even though you don't see it changing in front of your eyes, I can assure you our team is capturing it. So thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Joshua?
With respect to scheduling, since these are public meetings, I'm not exactly comfortable announcing my availability around a public meeting that's streaming online. I have a significant problem with that. I understand the desire. I'm also struck by the pressure to get into the meat of the conversation, which I felt like you were offering us to do, and then a need to pull back and push back against process again. It's not quite making sense to me that there's so much energy and kind of like fighting against, chomping against the bit, that when we get into a moment where we could work on some of the, the actual meat of the conversation, then we pull back into policy process again. I think that's a really unfortunate like ebb and flow of the way this committee has worked itself into a pattern.
Thanks for that, Joshua. Would you have a suggestion on how we could use our time related to that comment for the rest of this meeting?
I mean, I think I would like to hear some of these. I mean, we've heard some of the lived experience, but also some of the questions that arise regarding particularly the profiling disparities, the resources and recruitment processes, even if it's just initial framed as questions that we would like to have answered.
Got it. Cynthia?
Oh, thank you. As much as I want to be part of 3 of the subcommittees, just time-wise, I don't think that I'm going to be able to commit to all 3, and especially if the meetings go like an hour or 2 hours, and then including this meeting and with school, it's just going to be too much. I'm flexible wherever you'd like to keep me, wherever you'd like to remove me, but I just need to be removed from at least one of them. So if Kriegler, I really want to be part of the Civilian Review Board, but if Chairwoman Kriegler wants to be a part of that, I'm willing to remove myself. So wherever you see fit, but I can only serve on 2. Thanks.
And Tish, and then I would like to go after you raising a question in response to Joshua's comment too.
I would like to be considered for the subcommittee on training, hiring, recruitment, and retention, but I echo Cynthia, put me wherever you want me, and I'm flexible.
So Chair Kriegler, I'd like to just acknowledge the comment from Joshua, but also acknowledge that we've heard a couple of comments about folks wanting to use the time that remains to schedule a meeting. And well, I understand his concerns about scheduling too. So that might be a difficult, maybe we shouldn't be doing that. But I was going to involve you in that process decision about how we use the remaining portion of our time. I started out with a suggestion about getting into a little bit of the substance of the goals of each of the subcommittees, which Joshua, I think I heard you saying you were interested in that. But at the same time, we have folks who are wanting to use the time to kind of check off some things that we as a group would want to check off around scheduling.
I think
go ahead.
Go ahead. I would say if the task force, not us, but you guys, the delegators, if would be quick and active on polling on a related spreadsheet or something like that, I think that would I would kind of roll back my motion to use it as scheduling and actually hear Joshua's concern. So if that's a commitment that you guys as not us task force, I keep forgetting you guys' name.
Facilitators.
Facilitation team.
If you guys can, poll, then I'd be more than happy to fill Joshua's and second his motion.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And sorry, Joe, to cut in. I would just say that, we can get scheduling polls out to folks, I would say at the latest Monday, but probably even tomorrow if we can carve out some time. So I would be looking for that on email. It'll show you a list of times that could be used for subcommittees. I think that it would be helpful just for us to clarify whether folks would like for subcommittees to meet as a general rule at 6 o'clock or later. We were under the impression that that was best, given that so many folks have obligations during the day. So we were assuming that we'd offer 6 p.m. slots, but that's what we'll do unless we hear otherwise. Thank you.
Joe, back to you, I guess, to facilitate that conversation on goals.
Well, yeah, I think it sounds like there may be some comfort level with doing that, and we may not, it just may be the only way. Also, because I think we're still missing at least one person from the task force present today. So around scheduling, but to do that through polling, and we can do that. Turning back to the discussion then about goals and getting into, I'll just take the first one on the upper left as an example to start with. Subcommittee on Training, Hiring, Recruitment, and Retention. And I'd like to invite the folks who are both the folks who are currently listed there and others who may have expressed an interest since that slide was created with your name on it, to offer in some perspective on a particular goal specific to that issue that might be important to you as that subcommittee starts its work, as that subcommittee starts its discussion. One way these goals are going to be helpful for the process, obviously it's good to set goals at the beginning so you know where you're going. But second, we as a facilitation team and everyone else will be able to better support you with tracking down information that might be related to that issue or that aspect of what you're trying to do, and just coordinate our support to each of the subcommittees a lot better if we know some of that in advance. Doesn't have to be, but it helps. So I'd like to invite folks to share any perspective they have on what they think is going to be important related to this particular subcommittee: training, hiring, recruitment, and retention.
Couple of hands, Joe. I think I saw Kelmer and then Williams.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kelmer.
With respect to training, hiring, recruitment, and retention, I would like to find out what is the EPD's intended community impact with regards to training? What is it that we want to achieve when we train, hire, recruit, and retain police officers to better enrich the community and to promote public safety? And our current practices in alignment with that? If not, how can we improve? But what is our goal for the ideal community? And how does police training, hiring, recruitment, and retention fall into that?
Thank you, Tish. We got that noted. And I'm furiously scribbling as others are typing as well. Go ahead, Penelope.
For the training, I think a goal is to have an understanding of their training process and their recruitment process. Is this something that could be transparent to those who may be applying for the position? Are these things clearly laid out in the expectation of what training is? Are they expected to, what are the expectations? Is there a particular process as far as their background checks, mental health, the whole 9 yards, their beliefs, because they are, because this position it's a heavy position. I mean, they're dealing with all types of people, all types of backgrounds. They are carrying a weapon, so they hold life in their hands, whether they protect it or they can take it. So these things need to be clearly, what are the clear expectations of a police officer? Is it clear in their recruitment, other than, because I've seen some of the recruitment and the salary is big, that draws people, but are you capable of really handling this job? What is that screening process like, and how does that relate to their training? And even with that training, are there cutoffs? Or like, you know what, we're seeing some red flags, or are we just pushing people through because we need to get people onto the force?
Thank you for that, Penelope.
Joe, I just wanted to interject that Karen and others there's like emoticons going up of applause or thumbs up. So Tish and Penny are making points that others think are good. Just wanted them to know.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Aubrey, and also once again, reiterate inviting folks who haven't commented or on this or other topics to speak. Go ahead, Aubrey.
I think a goal would be to understand the prerequisites for the role in their recruitment and hiring process. What would be some things that would disqualify somebody from being hired? How does that compare to best practices? How does it differ from best practices in hiring a police force? There was another one that I thought of and now it's gone. So we'll leave
that's
it.
fine. And to allow us to have, within the time that's left, a little bit of discussion on each of these, I'll just say, we'll do like 7 minutes or so, and then we'll move on to the next one. Tish, was that a new hand or an old hand? Old?
You hadn't taken it down.
I know these hands don't expire, Kevin.
Hi, yeah, I just, want to quickly mention things like diversity hiring, the roles of police, like, traffic police versus police who are coming in contact with like mental health patients versus, all those different roles, kind of in questioning why or what do we see, what roles are they actually playing here in Elgin?
Thank you for that, Kevin. I wonder if someone could put the slide back up. Because I was about to move to the second one. Oh, Aubrey, your hand is up. Is that again? Or
yeah, sorry, I just remembered what it was. Really? Welcome to my brain. So I would be interested in hearing educational requirements and then continuing educational requirements. Teachers are required to have certain continuing education certifications, and I would be interested to hear if there are any for an Elgin police officer. And again, would love to see some benchmarking to see what other police forces are doing in that arena.
Thank you, Aubrey. And I'm just realizing something we have forgotten to mention, which is that the subcommittees, as we've had Chief Lally have a strong presence here when we've needed her commentary or response to a question. She's expressed a willingness to have herself and officers come to or speak to or respond to questions from the subcommittees. So that is totally within the purview. As we're expecting, that's totally within the purview of the subcommittees to have that discussion. I would encourage it. Councilman Powell.
Yes, thank you. I don't like to say a whole lot because this is the task force's meeting, but just a couple of recommendations because I'm glad to see that you know, some of the meat is really starting to get discussed in the meetings. But I would just say that a lot of the questions that have come up so far in terms of this particular subcommittee on the training, hiring, recruitment, and retention, there's a lot of information that can be provided. And I guess I would make a recommendation for a combination of things to be done to help answer some of those questions that have been asked. I think there's a lot of information that can be put into Dropbox that task force members and subcommittee members can and should be reading on their own outside of the meetings because it's a lot of information. And we can also ask Chief Lally to provide a brief presentation or overview on these areas. Now, this is a big area. It would take a whole lot of time, but I think we can, you know, if we just, you know, allocate a certain period of time to maybe do a presentation on some of this stuff to get the ball rolling, I think it would be helpful for the subcommittee. But there's quite a bit of information that can probably just be placed into the into Dropbox to help answer some of those questions as well.
Thanks, Council Member. Absolutely. I think that is part of what at least us on the facilitation team were planning on providing in support in our support role of the subcommittees is as much of that information as we can compile to make available for folks.
Else and some of that.
Ishmael, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Ishmael?
Yeah, a couple last things. One, I know that promotion was originally supposed to be part of this subcommittee, so looking into promotions, at least in the last 10 years, and kind of seeing how that falls. Regarding promotion and just general retention, I would really like to see about duration statistics to see how long police officers last in our police department or if they depart for any reason. You know, they'd often do exit interviews, so I'm sure that we can even ask for that with redacted information. I think that'd be important to know why people are leaving and to see how they utilize seniority in the police department as well. Like if you're here for so many years, what are your benefits for doing that? And then I know that this is something that the facilitation group can probably communicate. Sorry, that was my dog. Communicate is possibly doing any in-person viewing of training, whether that be sitting in a class, seeing like them actually physically train. I'm not sure how that falls in our calendar year, but that's an option as well. That's all.
Thank you for that. And Cynthia, and then we'll move to the next subcommittee.
Actually, that was, if you were doing the racial and other profiling disparities, was that the next one you're moving to?
Yeah, that's the next one.
Okay, that's what
invite folks.
Okay, that's where my question relates to. With the 2020 census information, I would like to see if it's possible to provide information about the different groups within Elgin. I know there's a strong Laotian community, Vietnamese, Hispanic. I'd like to see all of the different statistics related to the diversity within our own community, what those statistics are, and as they relate to with the police as well. I want to see if is there a certain group or certain needs, even from, and also with age, like the senior community, middle school, high school. I'd like to see what those interactions are with the police and what some of the greatest needs are within the community. But in particular, like there's a Polish community, just all the different diversity within Elgin. I'd like to see that census report if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Just wanted to encourage folks to, obviously it's great to hear what information needs you think you might have for this subcommittee that would support your role on it, but also to think too about, again, the goals. Like what is it that ultimately you would want this particular topic to be addressing, to be looking at, and to be making recommendations on as well. But so far, I mean, these suggestions are great. We have a ton of marching orders as far as information to start compiling. Councilmember Powell, you have an old hand up, or is that a new one?
That's an old hand, sorry.
Joshua?
Yeah, I think this is one place where the committees overlap, but I think it's important for the racial profiling one to address it first, is that the part that Marcus named before about forced engagements, particularly in naming that as a part of the racial profiling, but also then I think the committee on hiring and retention has to ask, how is that playing out in terms of promotion, evaluation, and such, right? So I think that's a robust question that can start one place and move to another, but I think asking it in that racial profiling one is a good place to start.
Yeah. Thank you, Joshua. Ishmael?
One thing that I would like to ask the subcommittee to look into is translation services for our residents. I grew up in a predominantly low income and undocumented area, and I remember a resident telling me that the police officers that dealt with her case refused to call a translator or a Spanish speaking officer, even though there was one in the vicinity. So I think that's really important, not necessarily just to our Spanish speaking, but we do have a large Polish and Laos population as well, to see where those translation services are provided. And whether there's a policy or procedure, like if you go to a scene of a crime or a scene that you get called onto, how quickly should you react to that need and that accommodation? So I would really like the group to think about that. And then that also kind of falls into the allocation of resources and things like that. Do they even have the resource there as well?
Thank you, Ishmael. And Chair Kriegler?
Yeah, with the racial disparities one, I actually think that there should be something such as the commonly identified causes of racial disparity in the criminal justice system. Also, in regards to the war on drugs, as well as the war on the African-American community, who took a big blunt in regards to that overt racial biases that also exist in regards to the racial disparities and how it affects the African-American communities. What else? Also, in regards to, I would also look at how individuals, and I guess it would probably be the populations in regards to the charges of how groups are actually charged, where I know with the African-American community, they're charged much more harsher, and I'd like to know why. For the same crimes, as a matter of fact. And then also looking at what programs are available and how the police department are willing to actually help those that are re-entering from serving time, prison sentences or jail sentences, and how they actually bring them back into our community and allow them to be functioning people in the community without being continually harassed and rearrested.
Thank you, LaJewel, for that. And I want to acknowledge Cynthia had a thumbs up to your last comment. Cynthia, you have a new hand. Go ahead.
Yes, LaJewel mentioned some great comments. A few of them I wanted to add on to. When she mentioned about the charges in the African-American community, I don't know if it's possible to have statistics related to what the charges were, what plea bargains were accepted, what race those plea bargains were accepted for, who had public representation, who had, other legal representation, And again, with those plea bargains, how much time was actually served and according to what races were they served? That might go a little bit further, but I don't know if that's possible to have those types of statistics. I really like what she mentioned about recidivism and reducing that, and not only from going back to jail, but introducing them into the community, what type of programs, and this speaks to the allocation group, what programs are available to reduce recidivism in the population.
Yeah. No, those are interesting points. I want to also mention that I'm not sure I'm an expert enough to know where on each issue the purview of police ends and other elements of our criminal justice system begins. But that might be a question to pose to Chief Lally on a specific issue, especially if we find ourselves coming up against that. Like, for example, something about a plea bargain or something like that might have more to do with what the county prosecutor does. And so I think it's about making the connection to where something starts with the police department on that issue and sort of drawing that in, and what is the thread for that particular issue. Go ahead, Ishmael, and then we'll move on to, I think it's resources might be the next issue.
Yeah, another thing if the subcommittee can look into, which I think kind of falls into the racial and other profiling disparities, is the concept of the residential officer program, where the police officers live in respective neighborhoods. Obviously, we all kind of know that at least in the city of Elgin, predominantly Black and Brown communities have those residential officer programs. And I'm sure that we've seen benefits and negatives to those programs. So I think that kind of doing an overlook of those programs and seeing how it really does impact, because what we all really know is that over-policing equals to over-reporting in comparison to predominantly white neighborhoods or predominantly wealthier neighborhoods, because that income does play a role into that as well. So looking into those things, because obviously wealth inequality is a wealth disparity as well. So if people who are assumed to be poor or low income are assumed to be prominent to crime. So I think that's something that we can definitely look into as a group as well.
Okay. Thanks, Ishmael. I want to turn and invite folks who are members of the Assessing EPD Allocation of Resources Subcommittee to share their thoughts too on that one with regard to outcomes you'd like to see or specific things you'd like to see that group addressing. Karen.
I'd like for us to take a look at the areas in which EPD has not properly, what's the word I'm looking for? They haven't committed to the role. So there's organizations out here in the community of Elgin that are dedicated to injury prevention when it comes to drug use, where there are areas that these resources that the Elgin Police Department is consuming, there are other forms of aid to the community that are better fit for those specifically financial resources. Whereas to the Elgin Police Department has not been meeting the community's needs. So specifically the gaps in which the community has a need, Elgin Police Department has not been able to meet that need, and where another organization or entity can step in.
Thank you for that, Karen. Tish.
Thank you. I would like to see where the money is being allocated in terms of mental health resources. The police are very often the first responders when it comes to calls that involve somebody in crisis. And they've made some strides with, crisis intervention training and that sort of thing. And I would like to see, can we collaborate with more of our mental health providers? Because very often, some of these calls, they shouldn't be arrested. People shouldn't be arrested. They need help. And I have a personal stake in mental health and making sure that we get people the help that they need. And is somebody acting out because it's a crime, or is there is there a greater need? We need to address that underlying need. And I think when, as a community, we really kind of achieve a higher ideal state, we will be addressing those needs, the needs of the poor, the needs of the mentally ill, the needs of anybody in crisis, anybody in need. So I would like to see where the money goes in terms of mental health intervention. I do believe that the police department is making strides in that direction, and I applaud them for that. But I want to make sure that, you know, that continues.
Okay. Thank you, Tish, Joshua, and Aubrey. And I want to leave at least a couple of minutes for our last topic too. Go
Sure,
ahead.
I'll just be fast. One is equipment purchases and such. Particularly, I know we have to report military equipment that comes into the community, but also beginning to see how much of the money is going towards equipment or towards that kind of training, looking at that balance. And then re-echo, I find it really unfortunate that we have to have it's good to have the contractors and not police show up on those mental health calls. But I would like to see a greater effort towards that direction budgetarily.
Yeah, and just echoing the mental health again, I'd want to see the frequency of mental health calls, and then what was the follow-up action. So how many times was the person who they're responding to transported to an area hospital? How many times did it result in arrest? Want to see those metrics. And then would want to see, I know that the Elgin Police has implemented some training specific to mental health. So I'd like to see if they have any metrics or any data that they have tracked that show an improvement in mental health calls. Like, is there anything that shows, is there any data that shows that those things they've implemented has been effective?
Thank you, Aubrey, for that. Cynthia?
Quickly, I wanted to see if there was any allocation of funds towards programs for children, school-age children, elementary, middle school. I believe we start early and start young, that even with conflict resolution, some of the children have never had that modeled for them. And I believe that if, the police dedicate a program for conflict resolution, teach the children also calming mechanisms too for themselves, and how to, calm themselves if they feel, agitated or anxiety, along with the mental health. Also mentoring programs. One person that cares can change the trajectory of a child's life and avoid, whether it's juvenile detention, then prison, perhaps later on, avoid them getting into the system altogether. So I'd like to see if there's allocation towards funds for programs like that at an elementary age.
Thank you, Cynthia. Kevin?
I just want to echo what Karen says. It's about the overlap of the police duties and other nonprofits and other organizations outside our area that could benefit from the money. So I really want to look at the allocation of funds to make recommendations that do not increase the police budget.
Got it. Thanks, Kevin. Ishmael, or did I skip you, Tish? I apologize. I'm sorry about that.
No, Kevin, Ishmael goes first.
Okay.
I have another
Ishmael.
comment, but I'm last.
Okay, go ahead, Ishmael.
I think that one thing that we can really look into regarding the allocation of resources and finances is a list of any jobs that have been dissolved in the last 10 years. So anyone who lost their jobs due to any budget restraints, or if the money got moved somewhere else, and any jobs that were created or moved forward in a different avenue, whether it was part-time to full-time or full-time to salaried, and what was the reasoning of those changes, and where are they filling in a gap that was needed? I think that's really important to know, because as we all know, there's certain programs that get cut in comparison to other departments that may not need that additional budget. So I think that's one thing that we can definitely look into.
Thanks for that. Go ahead, Tish.
I believe Kevin is next.
Oh, I thought I called Kevin.
Yes, go ahead, Tish.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. In terms of first responders, when you perhaps unfortunately have a loved one who is having a heart attack and you call 911, the fire department sends out the paramedics, a truck, and they respond. your loved one is taken to the hospital. If someone is suffering a mental health crisis and you call 911, it's the police that respond. So I want to make sure that we don't blur the lines that, oh, it needs to be allocated to a nonprofit social services provider. A mental health crisis is just as real as a physical health crisis. So I'm talking about making sure that we allocate funds for first responder emergency crises. Are the police going to be your counselor or your therapist? No, that's not their role. But when they respond to a call on the scene, I would like to make sure that they have the appropriate training, that they know what their mission is. Do you arrest somebody who's in crisis? You get them the resources that they need. It is just as important as somebody who's suffering from a physical crisis. Nobody questions the fire department on how they respond to a physical crisis. I would like to see the same for mental health. And I believe that the police are the first responders when it comes to mental health calls.
Okay, thanks, Tish, for that. We're past time. I would really love to beg for more time from you all to just wrap this discussion up, just a few more minutes to allow this same quick round robin set of comments on the last topic, which is the Civilian Review Board. And also just remind folks that, that topic is pretty well fleshed out in the sense that, we have I think there was, as this was proposed, we were talking about picking up an existing process. So, but do want to invite folks who are on that to share their kind of goals and thoughts just real quickly, maybe in the next 5 minutes or so. Denise.
Okay, so this is not a goal, but this is a request from the people who are on the subcommittee that we make a commitment to read the information that's in the Dropbox about civilian review boards. In the Dropbox is the PowerPoint that Councilwoman Powell presented. There's information on, I think it's the Aurora Citizens Review Board. And so there's lots of information in there. I want us to make a commitment that that we will have read that material prior to our first meeting, so that we're coming in with a knowledge base. So that's one thing. And a goal that I would have is that we have the goal of presenting or making our recommendation to the task force at the second meeting in February, and then with the goal of presenting it to the city council in March. And I think that I'd like to have us have a goal of looking at best practices around citizens review boards, and also offer, invite in people from the City of Aurora's Citizens Review Board to talk with us during one of our subcommittee meetings.
Thank you, Denise. Very specific thoughts on that. Appreciate it. Yep. And there were a couple of thumbs up.
Yep, I see them.
You were talking too.
Thank you.
Anyone else on Citizens Review Board subcommittee? All right. If that's where we leave it, that's where we stand. Thank you all. This has been in an amazingly short amount of time. We have fleshed out a lot of information related to each of the subgroups that I think if it doesn't start the wheels turning in everyone's head, I'm sure once you get into your discussions, you're going to start having those wheels turning. But I hope that this has started to spur some thinking and orientation for each of you towards the topic that you're going to be jumping into. So moving forward, oh, and we have.
And just quickly, just wanted to just show you just a visual representation of our conversation, like for the last 30 minutes, kind of just your ideas and how many great ideas everyone had. So thank you. So I
Need you
can
to zoom in, Sarah. Yeah, there you go. Whoa,
sorry.
too far.
I can zoom in for each one just
Yeah.
quickly, just showing you.
Great.
We are capturing everyone's topics.
And I
Joe.
think in the notes, we have those much more specific as well, with regard to like, this person said this and, the notes are highly detailed. Who was talking? I'm sorry. Oh, Tish, Councilmember Powell.
Joe, just real quickly, just to wrap up, I would recommend, and I guess this is something to the task force and the chair and co-chair. Could we assign and ask everyone to for the subcommittees that you are a part of, start making a list of your goals, objectives, and what it is, basically what it is you're looking to achieve. I think we've started a good discussion around some of the information and questions that you have, but we really didn't get into what it is you're looking to achieve, because I think that will help really hone in on what information that you need. Because I heard some information asked for that, quite frankly, I'm not understanding how it's going to be relevant to achieving some of the latter goals. It could potentially just kind of send us down a rabbit hole. So I think we really need to focus and have people start, and this is something that can, take place outside of a meeting, have people email that information to the leadership and facilitation team so that that can be put together and sent back out to the entire group before our next meeting. The other thing I would like to recommend is perhaps Chief Lally and myself and the leadership team and facilitation team, along with Councilman Shaw, because I'm already thinking about several presentations that Chief Lally has done over the past year or more related to a lot of these areas, that we can identify those and start putting them in the in Dropbox for people to, for reference material, so that a lot of the questions that are coming up again can be answered there. And last but not least, I'm just kind of concerned about trying to have 4 subcommittees going on at the same time. If that's, what you guys have decided to do, I guess that makes, that's what you're going to do. But I think that's a lot. And you've got a lot of people that are trying to serve on multiple ones. I thought that the goal was to have maybe anywhere between 2 or 3 taking place at one time, and then moving on to the next set. But that's just my observations right off the top of my head. But I would really just ask that folks really start thinking about the goals, and what it is you're trying to achieve in each of these subcommittees, so that we can go over that
list
at the next meeting. That's probably my main thing.
No, thank you, Councilmember Powell. And I think we can certainly extract from the things that people have said today, things that are, a goal or an objective versus something that is can be responded to via just information that's provided in Dropbox or through a presentation or something else. I think one thing we can do is in the communication that goes out to task force members very shortly here, we can add that request about sharing your goals and objectives and that can go into that communication, so that it's part of what we're asking people to give to us in between this and the next meeting. Does that sound fair, facilitation team? Sound reasonable?
Does, Joe.
Okay.
And and I know the other thing I thought I forgot. There was a recommendation to ask someone from the Aurora Police Civilian Review Board to potentially participate in one of the meetings, and I think that's a great idea. My only recommendation is that their review board is fairly new. If you're going to have someone participate, it may be a better idea to pick another community that has had their review board in place a lot longer, because they would have a lot more experience on what went well, what doesn't go well, what goes, what they would change, et cetera, because they've been in existence a lot longer than Aurora's. I think Aurora's has barely been in place a year, if that.
Thank you, Councilman Powell. Maybe we'll ask you to flush out the places that we'll put those in a list. And that particular committee can review and think about it and decide which ones they want to learn more about, basically. So we can put that in the box as well. At this point, I'm going to turn it. Have I covered, for my backup here, Sarah and Larry, have I covered all the issues that we need to related to next steps?
Yes, thanks,
Yeah,
Joe.
I think so, Joe. I would just note quickly that we'd ask folks to continue to hold the first and third Thursdays of each month for the task force. We don't know yet whether it'll be a full task force meeting on that night, a subcommittee meeting, to be determined. But we do appreciate everybody continuing to hold the first and third Thursdays at 6 p.m. for task force matters of one form or another. And we will work aggressively to get subcommittees scheduled as early in the new year as we can.
So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Chair Kriegler to close the meeting if she would like.
Okay, yes, I am now asking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All righty, and I thank you very much. And then a show of hands, please, that we're. All righty. It looks like we're out of here, and it is 8:14. You all have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Take